Nothing like bad habits.
Yeah, partner, I'm thirsty. I'm always in the juggernaut. freak bag! Gotta link up this machine. Dempsey's Butcher Shop is open for business. Damn, I need to kill more freak bags first. Dempsey is an awesome killing machine! Hey, need to clean up on aisle 4! I'm Dempsey, and you are dead! Don't mess with the Marine! You won't be giggling when I get through with you. What was that mainframe again? See that little guy light him up? 20. 15. California 1. I got something fun to bring to the party. Yeah, I had my eyes closed that time. Drop it! Hey, someone needs to clean up those freak bits. Sweet! There's gonna be a bunch of red flying in a second. You won't be giggling when I get through with you. Some bad guts. This is exactly what I needed. Wait to land on you, Buzz Buckets. They're dropping like bad habits. Don't mess with the Marine. Great bags. Dead seat. You are dead. Too bad there's not a hot-sounding chick counting down those numbers.
20. 15.
Here I come.
Active. Teleport successful.
That just never gets old. Hey, need to clean up on aisle 4. See you, maggot bags. How the hell does it do that anyway? Just never gets old. Anyone want some bad guts? It just pop clean off. How does it do that anyway? Yeah, I had my eyes closed that time. You don't mess with a Marine. Pack-a-Punch. Must have been named after me. Hoorah, Pack-a-Punch. Where's that dead meat? shot. News just in. Dempsey is an awesome killing machine. Don't mess with a Marine. How the hell does it do that anyway? Shock and awe. Someone needs to clean up those freak pits. Don't you puss bags get the idea yet? Dempsey's Butcher Shop is open for business. Bring it on! Chew on that, maggot sex! Not even close, freak bag! Wonder Walker. Awesome. To the brain. Much appreciated. Shock and awe! How the hell does it do that anyway? Whoa! That just never gets old. Eat it, freak bags! Don't mess with a Marine! Messed you up, freak bag! Didn't you hear? I'm a crack shot! Who's just hit? Dempsey is an awesome killing machine! Hoorah, devil man!
3, 2, 1. Brian Green, ladies and gentlemen. How are you, sir?
Good, thank you. How are
Thanks
you?
for doing this, man.
Oh, it's my pleasure.
I've enjoyed your work for many, many, many years. So really appreciate it.
Well, thank you.
Enjoyed this time. I just started my new book.
And how's it going?
It's going well. It hasn't confused the shit out of me yet, but I know it's coming.
It will be coming. No doubt.
With all your work. So the beginning of time, the beginning of the universe to the end. That's essentially what you're summarizing.
Yeah, that's the backdrop to the entire narrative of the book. I basically want the reader to get a feel for the whole thing, how it started, how things like you and me rise up, how consciousness emerges, issues of free will and whether we have it, and then on to the future, what's going to happen to us and the world and the universe as time elapses to the far, far future.
It's I'm just getting to the part where you're talking about how entropy and evolution sort of commingle to create life, and when you think of entropy, a lot of people think of something dissolving in chaos.
Yeah, exactly.
But that's not necessarily the case.
It's only part of the story. I mean, entropy kind of gets a bad rap, right? It's a thing
Yeah.
that you want to avoid, but somehow the laws of physics don't allow you to avoid it. It's this disintegration, it's this decay, this drive toward disorder. And that's kind of true. But the reality of the situation is more subtle because overall, entropy needs to go up. But that doesn't mean there can't be little pockets of order that form along the way. And in fact, the universe is incredibly clever. Stars, the ubiquitous feature of the heavens, they are pockets of order that naturally form, but as they form, they increase the entropy in the surroundings. So the net entropy goes up, even though this beautiful, orderly, bright object in the sky appears. And it's only because of the appearance of stars that the universe is an interesting place. Without stars, the particles of the universe would just disperse, the universe would get bigger and bigger, colder and colder, and that would be it. There wouldn't be any structure in the universe if it wasn't for the force of gravity.
Stars themselves, just the fact that they exist, is very strange. That you have this thing, and ours is fairly small, right? It's 1 million times larger than Earth.
Yep.
And it's going to burn for billions of years, and it's just hovering.
Yeah.
And it creates all the life. I mean, literally is responsible for all the life.
Yeah.
And when they supernova, that creates the actual ingredients for life, which is even more strange. You can't have biological carbon-based life. It's not for a star to explode.
Yeah, I mean, we often get the poetic way that we are made of star stuff.
Yeah.
Carl Sagan is. But you can also say that we are made of, nuclear refuse. We are the detritus that the death throes of the star puts out into the universe, and it rains down on planets, and on one certain planet, that stuff comes together and yields life. So it is a cycle. I mean, I don't want to sound like the Lion King here, but, it's really what it is.
Well, what I'm so interested about in getting into your book is the fact that you are sort of detailing all these steps that have to take place in order for all this life, in order for this universe to be what it is, and then where it's going to go.
Hell yeah,
Exactly.
that was sweet.
And the remarkable thing,
Eat
and
someone else, freak
sort of
bag.
the main point at some level is that, look, we're special entities. We can think, we can reflect, we have emotions, but ultimately you and I and everybody else, we're just bags of particles that are governed by physical law. And so there's this continuity between the stuff of the world, the inanimate stuff of the world, the inanimate stuff of the heavens, and they all come from the same fundamental beliefs and the same fundamental laws. Now, some people find that gives them, I don't know, a sense of desperation, a sense that we're not special, a sense that somehow the universe is pointless or meaningless. But, my view on this is it's spectacular that we're made of the same stuff that makes up this bottle of water or any of those wonderful statues you have on the desk. Because that means that how remarkable that collections of particles can do what they do. And I think that's really the way of looking at the continuity. We don't need to be endowed with some special quality, some external entity. You don't need that. Particles can do miraculous things. And that is the message that I think you can draw from a more complete understanding of where we came from.
That the fear of death and the attitude of the finite life being insignificant, that what is the point, is sort of existential angst that many of us struggle with, right?
Yeah, right.
That's something that you touch upon really early on, that this thing that makes us unique is that we know that we're going to die.
Yeah. That to me is the vital distinguishing feature of our species. We can recognize that we're not going to be here. And it's an idea, and it's powerful, motivating insight, one that has been explored throughout the ages.
Much appreciated.
Early disciples of Freud, who ultimately broke with Freud, developed this thesis that our awareness of our own mortality is one of the driving factors in what we do. And then when I was in my 20s or 30s, I read a book by a guy named Ernest Becker called Denial of Death. It was big in the 70s. One and it's a wonderful distillation of this way of thinking about why we do what we do. And in many ways, my own book, it's extending this notion that Becker developed in Denial of Death, but now seeing it in a cosmological setting, because it's not just we that are going to die, it's every structure in the universe is going to disintegrate. That theory suggests to us that even protons, the very heart of matter, they're quantum processes that in the far future will ensure that every proton disintegrates into a constituent particle. And at that point, there's no complex matter around at all.
What timeline are we talking about?
Well, pretty big, long timeline. In fact, I'd like to use a metaphor to try to give you a feel for the times involved. I like to use the Empire State Building. And imagine that every floor of the Empire State Building represents a duration 10 times that of the previous floor. Ground floor, 1 year, first floor, 10 years, second floor, 100, and so forth. So you're going exponentially far in time as you come up the Empire State Building. And in that scheme of things, everything from the Big Bang until today, you're about at the 10th floor, 10 to the 10 years, 10 billion years. And as you go forward, you are looking at things very far in the future. And to answer your question, we think, and I underscore think, because we're now at the speculative end of our theoretical ideas, protons will decay roughly in, say, by the 38th floor. So 10 to the 38 years.
So we can relax for a little bit.
You can relax for a little bit, but here's the thing. The amazing thing obviously is, it sounds trite, but time is relative, right? So any duration that seems long, it's only long by comparison to another duration. And on, say, the scale of the entire Empire State Building, up to, say, 10 to the 100 years, which is what the peak would represent, 10 to the 38 years is like less than a blink of an eye. I mean, it's nothing on those scales. So you sort of have to be careful with your intuition if you're willing to entertain the kind of fantastically long time scales that you necessarily need to if you're going to think about the very far future.
Is there speculation of what happens when protons really cease to exist?
We anticipate that all complex structure will fall apart. So if there are any stars left over, we believe that by the 14th floor, most stars will have used up their nuclear fuel. There'll be dark embers just sort of, smoking out there in the cosmos. But if they're still hovering around by the 38th floor, they will all just dissipate into their particulate ingredients. So it's hard to imagine past, say, floor 38, that there's going to be any life, any mind, or any complex astronomical structures out there in the universe. So the window within which the universe as we know it exists is kind of small when you think about it in terms of the entire cosmic timeline.
So impossible to understand the actual span of it because it is so long, but yet so small. Like in the human mind.
Yeah. It's very hard to hold.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't feel like I've been thinking about this stuff for a long time. I don't feel like I have a situation or the durations that we are talking about. In fact, the Empire State Building, that little analogy helped me to sort of give some relative sense of when things of interest will happen in the universe. But, we're good at understanding days, weeks, months, years, times, or conventional experience. We have no basis for understanding the universe over these scales that we've never experienced. And that's true not only for time, it's also for space, right? I mean, we have very good intuition about everyday phenomena. I mean, if I take a lot of water I throw it at you, you catch it, you know where to put your hand. You wouldn't have to calculate its Newtonian trajectory to figure out where the air is going. But if I were to do the same thing with electrons, you don't have, and neither do I, quantum intuition about the wave functions and the probability that govern how a particle like an electron behaves. And that's simply because we were unfortunately or fortunately born as big creatures relative to the scales of quantum mechanics. And because of that, our intuition was never under any evolutionary pressure to understand how electrons behave. fact, I like to say those of our forebears wandering around the African savannah who started to think about electrons and quantum mechanics, they got eaten, right? They're the ones whose genes didn't propagate onward. And therefore, those of us who are the beneficiaries of the survival of our ancestors, we're good at understanding Newtonian physics, but we're not good at understanding anything else about the deep reality.
Do you anticipate that someday in the future, whatever is next after human beings will be able to understand these concepts? Because if you stop and think about what a human is, we've only really been this for X amount of 100,000 years.
That's right. And it's a good question, and it's a tough one. I like to imagine that as we get ever better at creating virtual worlds, virtual reality, or whatever, augmented reality, whatever version of that kind of technology takes over the far future, we might be able to experience these distinct realms in such a powerful way that our innate intuition may begin to shift, to change, so that we grasp the quantum realm the way we grasp Newtonian physics. At least imagine the possibility of what it would take to actually get there, and whether our species will ever last long enough to actually have that kind of impact on our intuition, I don't know. But it's all about experience and survival. We have been programmed by evolution not to understand the true nature of the world. We've been programmed by evolution to survive. And those are two radically different propositions, because you don't need to know the true nature of survival. It's a distinct attribute, and one that is not necessarily one that has any survival value. To understand black holes, big bang, general relativity, quantum mechanics, or entropy, or thermodynamics. These qualities we develop as we go forward and try to understand the world, go beyond mere survival, and figure out things that excite us. But it's not something which obviously has any survival.
Maybe someday. It may. What's interesting is also how relatively recently people have been pondering these ideas in a sort of a quantifiable way. You write things down and sort of express it with other scientists and try to figure out who's right and who's wrong in terms of these calculations. But human beings, I mean, when did we really start pondering the scope of the universe?
Pretty recently. I mean, if you think about the beginning of modern physics, you can start with Galileo, you can start with Newton, but in any event, we're talking on the order of hundreds of years. The amazing thing, in hundreds of years, we've gone from a complete lack of understanding about how anything in the world works. Development of Newton's equations, where you can make fantastically accurate predictions about the solar system, including the motion of the planets and so on. And then, a couple hundred years after that, we migrate from that understanding, which is basically an encapsulation that we can all discern with the naked eye. We develop a whole new body of physical laws called quantum mechanics, which is so completely counterintuitive, which describes the world in terms of qualities that we don't ever see with the naked eye, but nevertheless, we can use the math to make predictions, and the predictions are borne out by experiment. And that progression only took, say, a couple hundred years. And that's where we've gotten. So it's kind of spectacular that, we beings who are just coming of age in the midst of a galaxy can sit down with a piece of paper and calculate the height, and we can figure out magnetic flux of particles like electrons to 10 decimal places. That's shocking. I mean, it's stunning. And it's something that I think all of us should be very proud of, that our species has been able to accomplish.
Somehow or another, I don't think that's my way. I don't feel proud. I don't feel like any of my people were involved.
You've contributed your part. No, it really is a collective effort. And that's the beauty of science. In the end of the day, it's not that most scientists are ever going to be remembered. You stop someone in the street and ask them to name a scientist. Yeah, they may say Hawking, they may say Einstein. That's kind of it, I think, for most people. And I don't think that's a bad thing per se, because it's not about the personalities of the people that have pushed the frontiers of understanding. it's the fact that we've got this body of insight that continues to grow and continues to allow us to manipulate and understand the natural world, and I think that's really what it's all about.
Don't you think that there are some personalities like yourself, Feynman, Neil deGrasse Tyson, that because of their personality, because they're charismatic people, it actually makes more people intrigued about these possibilities and makes more people attracted to these ideas?
Yeah, no doubt, and I think that's a vital point, because without that impetus from outside the traditional educational system, I don't think we would have the kind of interest in science that I feel growing around us. I mean, the unfortunate thing in the educational system is that we teach toward examination, we teach toward assessment. And if you want to figure out how to flatten a kid's interest in these ideas, just teach them stuff and tell them you're going to be tested on this on Tuesday. You're going to have to spit out, everything that you've learned. So I find it kind of heartbreaking, the way in which so much intrinsic interest in these ideas. And you can see it in 5 or 6, right? I mean, I like to say they're doing good science. They're exploring the world. We're trying to figure things out. And then we go into the educational system, and it's not it's just by the nature of how we teach and the current, approach to philosophy, that so many kids wind up seeing these ideas as a burden. I don't want to have to spend time learning about parts of the cell or how to balance reactions. I teach my own kids. I got 15-year-old son, 12-year-old daughter, and all they are motivated by is next Wednesday's quiz. And I'm like, hey, these ideas they're kind of exciting, they're kind of wonderful. Like, no, Dad. I just want to know enough about them to do well on the quiz. And once the quiz is over, they just sort of leave the ideas behind.
When did these ideas become attractive to you?
Well, I don't know, not unusual for a scientist, but unusual, I think, in the spectrum of kids in the world, because at 5 or 6 years old, I was just captivated by mathematics.
Really?
Yeah.
5 or 6?
Definitely, yeah. My dad was not an academic. My dad was a composer. He was a vaudevillian. He was a comedian. He was in the early days would go around the country and with a harmonica group and a stage show. That's what he did. He liked to say that he was an SPHD, a Seward Park High School dropout. So at 10th grade, he just hit the road. But he loved scientific ideas. So he taught me the basics of arithmetic when I was about 5 years old. And then I would ask him to set me problems, and he'd give me 30-digit numbers by 30-digit numbers, write them out on big instruction paper, and I'd spend the weekend just calculating away on these with no interest in anybody on planet Earth. But to me, the fact that you could learn a little piece of math and then do something that nobody had ever done before, that was exciting to me. And that's really what got me.
So you chose love now, clearly.
Yeah, well, you always wonder about that. I mean, you wonder. I always wonder, what would have happened if X would have inspired Y. In fact, I have to say, when I graduated college, I had sort of a period of, depression is too strong a word for it, but a period of, what have I done? I went to college. I could have studied all the great ideas of the world, and all I did was get a technical education, solve Schrodinger's equation and solve Einstein's equation. And I felt like, wow, I just squandered the greatest educational opportunity that one could have ever had, because I was so completely focused on just trying to understand physics and mathematics.
How'd you get past that?
Well, I was lucky. I was given a second chance. I won a scholarship to go to England, Oxford. And ostensibly, it was to study physics. But when I got there, I realized that I was completely free to do whatever I wanted to do. And so I took a year to study literature. I went to the physics classes, so I was sort of showing up. But I wasn't focused at all. And instead, I was focused. I got in England, they use a tutorial. So I got a tutor, which is somebody at the college that sets your assignments and you write papers. You literally go in and you read your paper out loud. It's not something you just turn it in and it gets graded. So it's a very personal experience. You write something and you're actually delivering it to this individual that is going to help you in your educational journey. And so that's what I did for a year. And at the end of that year, I kind of said to myself, okay, I understand now what it would mean to study these other subjects, and I sort of felt like I'll be able to do this on my own if I continue to be excited about it. And I went back to physics with a vengeance, and basically in that second year,
Just never gets old.
So this time that you took off this year, well, you didn't really take it off, but you changed paths.
Yeah, changed paths, yeah.
How beneficial was that for you? Do you think that
Hugely.
it helped you sort of appreciate what your original subject of interest was as well?
Yeah, hugely so, because, you know, it's funny. It's the flip side of something I often encounter with people that are interested in science but don't know math. And they always say, or some say, I'm never really going to understand this problem. And I try to convince them, look, at some level, research, my and all the tensor calculus, but if you're really interested in the ideas, you really can grasp the ideas without technical knowledge. So I try to demystify something that can seem impenetrable because you haven't entered the field. And I think the same thing happened to me in reverse for a more humanistic exploration. It had this aura of branding that I was unable to penetrate because I'd never really immersed myself in the ideas. And by spending a year in those ideas, it didn't diminish them in any way, but I felt like it brought it back down to earth as another journey toward growth, another pathway toward insight, and one that you don't have to have a degree in. You don't have to know the ins and outs of the academic version of the subject to understand it and grasp it and spend some time thinking about it.
So I think that for people studying anything, particularly those studying science and mathematics, very rigid disciplines, do you think that they all could benefit from sort of expanding your education into philosophy or art or something that uses your mind in a different way?
Yeah, some. There are some people in the physics and mathematics community who are so intensely focused that it would almost be a shame to pull their attention away from the deep dive that they're going to do for the rest of their lives and contribute to get their going and excited. But I think for many others, and certainly for me, I mean, look, as most people, but not all, but I learned early on that I'm not going to be an Albert Einstein. You know, I can make contributions, and I've had contributions to fields like string theory and cosmology, but they're never going to be at the level of shattering our understanding of the world, things that people are going to talk about 500 years from now. It's unlikely. And I think for somebody like that, who's able to make contributions, but pulling away from the technical work is not going to extract some vital insight into the nature of the world that otherwise wouldn't be discovered. I think there is great value in doing that. Because what the work we're doing is actually revealing. It's part of the human quest for understanding, and seeing it as an isolated discipline where it's all about the next equation and the better U-5 theory or the deeper understanding of the Big Bang, to see that as isolated from human quest for understanding, I think diminishes the work that we in physics do.
Was that a part of your initial ambition?
Yeah, it was.
Leave something that would just rock the world?
Yeah, well, to go back to the comment that you made before about we being the only species that knows that we're going to die, I think part of it instilled in me. I see it in my own life, even though at the time making your decisions, I wasn't literally thinking about these kinds of issues of mortality, but how do you deal with that recognition of the impermanence of your own life? Well, I think part of it is a symbolic kind of immortality. You create something that will last. You create something that will have such impact that it will stick around for a long, long period of time. So I think, yes. I mean, part of my motivation in doing physics was not merely to get the next decimal place in this or that physical quantity
Guns
in the
getting
natural
hungry.
world.
Time to
We
feed.
should try to have some kind of insight that would rock our understanding of the world and have reverberations that would echo out for many, many years to come.
That's interesting. Did that torture you somewhat? I mean, is that something that like haunted you? Is it in your head all the time?
Not really.
But an ultimate ambition?
An ultimate ambition, yeah, for sure. And look, when you're doing any work whatsoever, the day-to-day, the moment-to-moment is the grind. I don't know how you find it in the work that you're doing, but if I'm working on a research project, even if in principle the ideas are grand and wonderful and bold, the moment-to-moment is calculating the large. It's trying to figure out that equation, putting that equation on a computer. I mean, it is not sexy. It is not something that has that glorious quality that you might ultimately describe when you're finished and you look back and you think about the implications of it. The moment-to-moment of almost anything else is wrong. So I think that's ultimately what is the driver of whatever you're doing in your life, the moment-to-moment. But yeah, there's certainly a part of me that would
Gun juice is running low.
have
Gun
a
juice is
desire,
running low.
a hope that would reverberate in a powerful way. I think that's true for most physicists, that notion that you sort of sit at a table and think and change the way we understand reality, the way Einstein, the way Schrodinger, the way Niels Bohr.
What percentage of people have that revelation?
Yeah, I think it's pretty few and far between.
And
So
everybody else is sort of just contributing.
and
Occasionally someone,
exactly.
some light bulb goes
Just
off.
sort of powerful new insight, and you're like, that's change.
That's so exciting.
And it's what keeps you going. It's what keeps you going.
To be the person who has the light bulb.
Yeah, but I tell my students, and especially young students who come in and are still trying to figure out what they want to do, if you're not satisfied
Gun juice
with
is running
just
low.
contributing, if you're not satisfied with being part of the journey but not the person at the head of the breakthroughs,
Need to round up
it's
some rounds.
probably not the field for you because it's so unlikely.
Gun juice is running low.
Because it's not just brain power. It's thinking of the right questions. It's thinking of things in the right orientation. It's being at the right place at the right time with the right DNA that somehow is attuned to the question that's being asked. So it's not even fully under your control. It's not just a matter of exercising your mind, building up the muscles of the brain in such a way that you are the strongest person to contribute to this idea. It's luck. It's being there when the question's being asked and to see the way forward.
It's so interesting. There's so many people working on this stuff. And the average person that doesn't contemplate quantum physics,
Hi, I'm Dempsey.
these equations, we have no idea it's going on. And that all this work that's so critical to our understanding of what the universe really is, with the very fiber of the universe itself.
Yeah.
All this is going on. And most people are just sort of, they're reaping the residual benefits of it.
Yeah.
But they're just wandering around, not knowing.
Yeah, hugely so. In fact, there's a number that's quoted that quantum mechanics is responsible for something like 35% of the growth. So it's like, in a very concrete way. Now, the problem with that number is I recently looked it up to find the source of it, so I sort of went online and checked it out. And apparently I'm the source of this number. And I assure you that I've not done a calculation that really fully justifies it. But roughly speaking, anything that has an integrated circuit is the result or beneficiary of quantum insights. So we use this stuff every moment of our technological lives. And yet, as you say, for the most part, people don't have a deep understanding of the reality that's responsible for the gadgetry that we give rise to. And it's a strange, quantum mechanics is an utterly strange reality.
Too strange. I've tried many times.
And again, it goes back to, our brain is just a part of
How the hell does it do that
But I assure assure you, you give me a couple hours. I mean, books are one thing, but you give me a couple hours in the back and forth, and I will absolutely get into a place where you appreciate and have a sense of what these ideas really are telling you about me.
Here's the thing that I've always wanted to ask you. What do you think is happening before?
It's a deep question and a subtle one. And there's sort of two ways that I'd like to think about that question. One is it could be that the Big Bang was an interesting event, but not the first event in the totality of reality. It could have been the first event that sparked the expansion of our part of space. But it could be that there's a grander realm of space within which we sit as a small part. And that grander realm, in a far longer period of time, it may have experienced its own Big Bangs, maybe a collection of Big Bangs that may extend infinitely far into the past. So it could be that the answer to the question of what happened before the Big Bang is a lot of other Big Bangs or a lot of other quantum events that were taking place in a larger landscape of reality than we know right now. However, another answer is that the very question may not make as much sense as the words seem to suggest. We know how to parse that sentence. We know what it means to talk about the moment before the Big Bang because we know how to talk about the moment before your birth, or the moment before the Civil War, or the moment before any event that happened in the world. We fully understand the meaning of that kind of sentence. But it could be that when it comes to the Big Bang, the sentence actually doesn't mean anything. It could be that the Big Bang was the place where time itself started. And Hawking himself had a wonderful analogy to get this across. He said, look, I'll dress it up a little bit. Imagine you're walking on planet Earth and you pass by something. You say, hey, can you point me in the direction of north? I want to walk in the northward direction. They point you, continue to walk, you pass by somebody else, say, hey, which way is further north? And they point you in that direction. But when you get to the North Pole and talk to somebody there and say, hey, how do I go further north? They look at you and say, well, that question doesn't mean anything because this is where north begins. There's no notion of going further north than the North Pole. And it could be that that spatial metaphor applies to time. Talk about a billion years ago, or 1 billion years ago, but if you go up to 13.8 billion years ago, the Big Bang, that may be where time started. And you can't go further back in time. Very far. So, yeah.
See, that's one that gets in your head. Well, what do you mean, beginning of time?
Yeah.
Why would time have a beginning?
And it could be that time is an emergent quality of reality. To give you an analogy of what I mean by that, we all know what temperature means intuitively. Something's hot, you feel it. Something's cold, you feel it. Your body understands those concepts. What physics has done is it's gone deeper into the concept of temperature and revealed that it is nothing but the average motion of the particles making up the environment. So if the molecules are moving really quickly, you've got a hot environment. If the molecules are really moving slowly, it's a cold environment. So temperature emerges from the motion of particles. So if you have like one particle, you can't really talk about it being hot or cold because you need a conglomerate. You need an agglomeration of particles to be able to talk about those average motions. And in that sense, temperature is this emergent idea that rests upon the fundamental values of the molecules and atoms that make it reality. And maybe that's true of time. Maybe time as we know it is a property that only makes sense in certain environments when there's enough stuff arranged in the right pattern. But fundamentally, maybe there are atoms or molecules of time which, when not arranged in the form that we are familiar with, don't yield time as we know it. The time itself may be a quality of the world that exists here in this environment, but doesn't even apply in other environments that are configured radically differently.
You meatheads are too stupid and quick.
What also is a heavy one is what caused the Big Bang?
Yeah.
Why would something smaller than the head of a pin become everything we see?
Yeah. So there are ideas for the answer to that question. Look, all of this is tentative because it's very hard to do measurements that all can have in the beginning, astronomical observations that we need to be sure are compatible with predictions of our future. So science still would need to be done. But the idea that I think most physicists or cosmologists buy into is that gravity can have two manifestations. The usual form of gravity that you and I know about is the attractive force. You drop something toward the Earth and it moves downward because the Earth and the object pulls on it. That's the ordinary gravity that we experience every day of our lives. But Einstein's equations allow gravity to also be the opposite. It can push outward as opposed to just pulling inward. And this is something that we have never experienced because the gravity created by a rocky is always the attractive gravity. Gravity created by the sun, again, common, always the gravity. Einstein's math shows that if you don't have a rocky object that is isolated in space, but rather energy that is uniformly spread through a region of space, that kind of entity yields repulsive gravity. Why is that important to your question? If the very early universe, that little tiny head of a pin that you're talking about, if it was filled with a uniform bath of this energy, we call it the infiltrate, but if it was filled with that energy, it would have been subject to repulsive gravity. What does repulsive gravity do? Pushes everything apart. It causes everything to rush outward. So the bang of the Big Bang may have been a spark of repulsive gravity operating within a tiny region of space that pushed it is theoretical, but it's at a level of understanding that I think most physicists would say causes it to migrate into the camp of established understanding of gravity. Number one, Einstein's equations have now been tested over and over again in a whole variety of ways. The detection of gravitational waves that happened years ago is like a crowning triumph of Einstein's math. 100 years ago, the math said there should be ripples in the fabric of space. 100 years later, we finally detect ripples in the fabric of space. So we are very comfortable with any prediction that can get and right in the middle is the prediction of what I was just describing. You've got uniform energy in a region, repulsive gravity. The other thing is, we currently witness that the expansion of the universe is speeding up, not slowing down. Since the 1920s, everybody thought that, yes, the universe is expanding, but it will slow down over time. Why? Because gravity pulls things back together. You throw an apple upward, it doesn't go up faster and faster. It goes up slower and slower because the Earth's gravity pulls it back. Everybody thought the universe as a whole, expanding but expanding ever slower. The observations in 1998, culminating when the 2011 Nobel Prize showed that the distant galaxies are moving away ever more quickly. The expansion of space is speeding up over time. It's accelerating. The best explanation we currently have is repulsive gravity. We believe even today the universe is suffused with energy, always dark energy. We believe it's uniformly going through space. I like to think of it almost like the Turkish sauna, like the steam during the sauna. This energy release, and that repulsive gravity, we believe, is responsible for the observation that the distant galaxies are rushing away faster and faster over time. So it's circumstantial, but the case for repulsive gravity is quite strong.
And what would have caused stress and emissions?
Yeah.
Why would all that matter in this tiny, less than a pin size?
So I have no idea. And nobody else has credit for any real idea other, but we do have theories. And one of the theories suggests that in the very early environment, very hot, with all the fields fluctuating wildly up and down. And the idea would be that if you wait long enough, well, it's hard to know what wait means in this environment, but don't trust me on my definition. This is just intuitive. If you wait long enough, the energy will just happen to flatten out in the region, become uniform, and then that region explosively inflates, grows large. So, imagine you're looking at a pot of boiling water. The surface is, of course, wildly undulating up and down. But if you wait long enough, very long time, since you've never seen it nearby, there will be a little patch on the surface of that boiling water that flattens out. Why? That only means that the water molecules happen for an instant to be moving in just the right way to keep that little patch of water from wildly bubbling. It will happen, it's rare, but if you wait long enough, it will occur. Similarly, the widely undulating fields in the early universe, if you wait long enough, a patch will flatten out, you get the uniform energy, plug it into Einstein's equations, that region explosively inflates. I mean explosively. It can go from a size that's much less than an atomic diameter to larger than the observable universe in far less than a blink of an eye. 10 to the minus 30, 10 to the minus 35 seconds. That's how powerful repulsive gravity is.
So before that, before this happens, you just have in this theory, you just have all of this energy randomly interacting with other energy with no physical that could have been
and in fact, that's the main point. There's nobody who is hanging around looking at their watch saying, good God, when is this Big Bang going to finally happen? You know, so you can have this cosmological free show. You can have it last as long as you like. The only thing that needs to happen is that sooner or later, the region flattens out, and then the cosmological show begins.
And if we're looking at this model, it's going to be different characteristics and different qualities to them. This could be happening throughout infinity.
Yeah.
All over the place.
Yeah, and in fact, this so-called inflationary cosmology is the technical name for the subject. It says that it's quite likely that this explosive inflation of the region that we currently inhabit, it was just one of many subjects. And therefore, there are other far-flung regions throughout this larger cosmological system where things have also inflated, but the details can be different. The physical details can differ from what we are familiar with. And the differences can be small. Temperature differences, space differences, or they can be far more significant. Even the particles that other realm may be different from the particles that or masses can be different. Their charges can be different. Fundamental physical features can be different. So out there in that wider cosmological landscape, it can be the wild, wild west of realities.
They don't have to worry about proton acceleration.
There may be realms in which they don't have to worry about protons falling apart. The wild, the really crazy item is that if you're very careful mathematically in analyzing these theories, you realize that there have to be realms out there that duplicate ours as well. Many can be different, but there have to be versions of this reality that are also instantiated, occur out there in other realms. So you come to these crazy sounding, sci-fi sounding ideas that you and I are having this conversation out there in other distant realms.
An infinite number of times.
Infinite number of times. Those small differences can also apply in these other realms where maybe our positions are interchanged at the table. Or, you know, maybe your name is Joe Green and Brian Rogan, or there's like strange realities that can be taking place. And this is not an overworked theorist imagination. This is the careful, just intimate analysis of the mathematical equation. Now, as you say, there are some physicists who see this implication and say, whoa, you guys have fallen off the deep end. Your theory has imploded because any theory that predicts that kind of a wealth of realities that are kind of untestable because they're so far away that we will never interact with them, that's the kind of theory that we have been trained to avoid, to excise. However, the more forward thinking I'd like to describe us, physicists say, hey, math has proven to be a very valuable guide over the course of hundreds of years. And if this is where the math is taking us, it's at least worthy of our attention to investigate it fully and possibly come to the conclusion that this is how reality actually behaves.
That's the weirder stuff. the weird, it's like when people talk about intelligent life, someone you're a version of you or infinite version of you.
Yeah, and it can be disturbing. What do you mean by you? If there are many of yous out there, each of whom has an equal claim on being you because they have the same experiences, they have the same memories.
And maybe it's made infinite variations in the decisions that you made in your life.
That's right.
So you could meet a Brian from your age somewhere out there.
Made the right choices. Exactly.
Become a gambling addict.
Yeah, you know, it's like a Star Trek episode where you've got like Spock and evil Spock. You know, the one that has a little beard on. Right. So there's going to be a little bearded version of me, a goatee out there. So yeah, you know, this sounds kooky. And the danger of kooky sounding ideas in physics is that there are people who then jump off it and say, well, that's possible. Then this is possible. Maybe I can with my mind affect what other people are doing. So there's all sorts of crazy ideas that can be inspired by the weird insights of modern physics. And you've really got to keep straight what's real and what's ridiculous.
But that's a problem, right? When people start using, especially if they're articulate, they start using science to describe things as very unscientific. It's sort of like what the But that was one of those movies where a lot of people, like, there was all this quantum talk. Quantum was in it, the little cartoon, particle in the 80s, and you're like, there's science behind this, but then at the end of it, really, it was something that was created by someone who runs a cult, who believe they're channeling someone who's like a 1,000-year-old alien, like that whole Ramtha thing.
Yeah, well, let me tell you.
Please.
So, a couple years ago, I was in the middle of a big project. In fact, I described this toward the end of the book, so you'll get to this little anecdote if you choose to carry on reading. I was in the middle of a big project, and a speaking opportunity came in, and I didn't properly vet it. You know, the money looked good and looked like a fine thing, and I signed off on it. And then a few days before I'm going, I realized that to go to talk to Judy Zebra-Nemesis, who channels Ramtha, the 35,000-year-old Lemurian sage. And I said to, you know, the folks who should have been checking in, it's like the lecture agent, I can't go. And you're like, hey, it's tomorrow. It's too late right now. You know, so I look at some videos online and I see her on like Merv Griffin show, where, you know, she channels Ramtha on live television. I don't know what year this was. You know, she snaps her head forward and goes back. She changes her voice. It becomes like something between the Queen and Yoda. You know, it's a really weird place. And she's like, you know, hello, King. And she's talking to Merv Griffin, you know. She's talking about like an airplane. She goes, what's this airplane? You know, that kind of thing. Anyway, so I go, you know, and I show up. And the first thing I see is there are all these people walking around a grassy field with their arms out like this. And I get closer, they're all blindfolded. And I'm saying, what is going on? And they describe that each person has a card around their neck where they've written down their life dreams. And an exact copy of that card has been put out in the big field. And they have to feel their way toward the matching card. And if they succeed, this shows that this goal is coming together. You know what I'm saying to those guys? Like, so how's it going? He goes like, really good. You know, one person found their card. And the last one was like, you know, what's the odds of probability of that happening? Not unreasonable. And then they take me to the blindfolded archers. Oh, yeah. You know, so they're taking a bow and arrow and they're firing at these standing way back on and they asked me, you know, do you want to try it? And I was like, you know, there's like photographer with a couple of them. No, I'll avoid that. And then they introduced me to this woman who is able to predict the next card in a shuffle. And, you know, so she'd pull out this card and she'd say, okay, it's going to be 7 of clubs.
Eat someone else, freak bag!
And then the next one is the 7 of diamonds. She goes, oh, well, there's the 7 that I was talking about, you know, one card before. You know, so it's this crazy circumstance where, and then I go to give my talk. Okay, because that's why I was there after all. This was just like a preamble showing me what they do.
So.
I walk into this room, and I across the threshold of the car, we were all giving me a standing ovation. And I'm like, appreciate it, but like, and then I go and I say to them straight out, what I've seen here is nuts. Okay? I say, if you're gonna try to predict next cards in the deck, 1 out of every 4 times you'll get the suit, 1 out of every 13 times you get the ring. There's nothing in there but the pure probabilistic laws of mathematics. They rise up and give me a standing ovation, and I say, it's appreciated, but why are you applauding? I'm telling you that you're wasting your time. Me again. And I'm like, this is like so totally weird. But then I go to the book
Wonder Waffle.
People, they're talking, and they talk to themselves and say, there's a lot of crazy stuff that's happening. But we come here because we feel that there's something else in the world, and we want to be around like-minded individuals that are searching for the deeper truth. So thank you for calling out the silliness here, but we'll come here anyway and spend our money because we want to be part of the journey. And I have to tell you, I have a degree of sympathy for them. Because I get the motivation. I mean, as a physicist, what we do is we are revealing strange features of the world. So I get the urge, I get the desire. The problem is that the methodology that's being employed is something that will never take us closer to the truth. Something that may feel that you're among like-minded individuals. So I get the motivation, I get the sensation of the urge, but it's the fact that feel that this kind of an undertaking is the pathway. And let me finish up. So, after this, they take me to the dinner. The dinner's in a mansion at the top of the hill, and that's where Judy. I'm probably going to get sued. Really? I don't know. But I've never spoken about this. Yeah, sure. Well, no, they're quite litigious.
Are they?
But yeah, no, they definitely are. So anyway, this is just one person's opinion. They take me to the mansion at the top of the hill, and that's where she is. She doesn't come down and actually participate in the job. She's like watching it on closed circuit television up in the mansion. And I walk in, and she hugs me. But it was too goddamn long of a hug. You know what I'm saying? It was like, and she was like, thank you. It was like this big emotional thing, and I was like, I don't get it, but I think that's the way that we enter on this so-called journey towards truth, where she's, channeling this, made up
Wonder Waffle.
Is this all still going on?
It was just a couple years ago, so I imagine it is.
Imagine if she's really channeling.
Yeah.
They're just missing.
That's right. That would certainly rewrite every rule of reality, every
Yeah.
law of physics that I understand.
Wouldn't
but,
that be less weird than the Big Bang itself?
no. I tell you what. See, when it comes to the Big Bang, I can sit down with the mathematics I understand well, and I can follow the deductive chain of reasoning that gets us to some of these strange understandings that we're talking about, like the Big Bang, what the realities, and so on. When it comes to channeling a 35,000-year-old sage, I don't know what the hell that even means. I don't understand the physical processing of how this possibly happened. I don't understand how there could have been a being of the sort that she's channeling alive 35,000 years ago. It doesn't have any agreement with the there's a vital distinction between weirdness that emerges from perception and weirdness that emerges from an overworked imagination that possibly sees a business model whereby a lot of money can be brought in if you can get people to buy into your vision of how the world works.
So it's sort of like what they do is they curate it, and then they run them through their sort of filter of woo-woo.
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
And then they distribute it in a very palatable way that attracts people. That movie, I tell a story, I've told this before, so I apologize if people heard it. There was a friend of mine at the Comedy Store, but she came to the Comedy Store and she was so happy. And I'm like, she was like, I'm so happy. Why are you so happy? She goes, because I found the secret. And now that I know about the secret, I'm going to be married, I'm going to do this, I'm going to have a fulfilled life, I'm going to reach my dreams, excited about that. So, you know, at the time I had just seen the movie, and then I was just starting to understand the criticism of the movie. I was reading all these, you know, accounts.
Sure.
Where scientists were breaking down all the things that were wrong. And I know I didn't just dash her dreams. I just was like, wow, okay. And then I saw her a year later, the outside of another one of my shows, different comedy club. And I was like, hey, how you doing? It's like, things are just not going the way I thought. I thought because of The Secret that everything would be good, and my dad is still a pain in the ass, and you know, he's dealing with me, he doesn't have any money, and I can't establish a good relationship, and I don't have the job that I wanted, and I don't understand because I've been using The Secret. I think about it every day. And I said, here's my take on this. If you talk to someone who's very successful and you say to them, hey, how did you get very successful? And they say, I thought about it all the time. I have a vision board. I took that photo of the house that I wanted. I put it in the vision board. That became mine. I took, you know, this idea. I want a beautiful wife. I want a family. I want sports cars and this and that. And now I have it because the mind is a powerful tool, and the mind can create reality. If you were just talking to someone who is successful, how many people thought like that had nothing to do? I bet millions.
Yeah.
I bet there's so many people. You have a bias in successful youth. Those are the ones who you want. And just because of the fact that they're able to have extraordinarily successful lives while visualizing these things does not mean that visualizing these things creates an extraordinarily successful life. You have to think, and you have to act, and you have to do.
Right.
And there's trial and error, and there's a lot of lessons to be learned. But if you want to simplify it at the end, once you're successful, and boil it down to a philosophy that you can sell a course on, that's what it would be.
Yeah, no, that's exactly right. Look, there's nothing wrong with visualizing success, but that is not the causal ingredient that will yield the success. The thing that comes to mind, you know, I don't know if they do it anymore, but there was certainly a time when Olympic athletes would be taught to visualize, say, jumping over that high wall, you know, and they'd run through the whole thing. But that's not all that they were doing. They were doing, you know, 10 hours a day of training. Integrated this visualization as part of the training program.
Yeah.
You know, so it's kind of tragic when people buy into these crazy. I have to tell you, when they were making it, they called me to be in it. And I think it was the director, one of the producers I was on the phone with. And, you know, they were describing what they were doing, and I probed sufficiently hard, and some of my friends did not probe sufficiently hard and were in the film and regretted it. But I probed it enough, and I said, look, what you're doing to me sounds really dangerous. It sounds like a really bad thing to be doing. And they took offense in that call back then. A year after the film came out, it was either the director or producer, I can't remember, called me up and said, I want to apologize. You were absolutely right. I have finally realized what a bad film this was to be involved in, and I completely regret it. So that, I don't think is the point of view of you know, the School of Enlightenment, which is behind this part of it. But at least the directors saw the light, realized that this is not the only information that you want to put out in the world, because it can change people's lives in a very negative way.
You know, I think the Olympic athletes are visualizing something that there's a great benefit in visualizing for athletics and martial arts, visualizing success, visualizing potential problems, failures of your process, how you're going to adjust on the fly. All those things are great, because then when things do take place in real life situations, you've already prepared for them. You know what they happen.
Right.
That's what that's all about.
I agree with that. And in fact, like I said, you know, this is one of the chapters that we have in the book describe theories about why it is that we, for instance, tell fictional stories. I mean, could there be any evolutionary value in two individuals telling each other a story that they both know is false, that they know has no connection to the world around them, but yet we've been doing this since the emergence of language? And there are these interesting interesting evolutionary scenarios in which what you're saying is brought to bear in that unfamiliar context. We tell stories because it's the mind's way of rehearsing for the real world, but it's a way of rehearsing for the real world that's completely safe. So you can go on all sorts of crazy journeys to the underworld, up into the clouds. You can engage in all sorts of battles. You can fight gods or demigods. All these things can take place within your imagination. So you're completely safe. And yet when you encounter something that's analogous to the stories that you've been told or retold or embellished or told to others through other accounts, your brain is more attuned to respond in a beneficial way because it's not as novel as it would have been had you not been engaged in this fictional account of telling stories. So there's value in visualizing. There's value in telling stories. But it's not being called or taught that some individuals would want us to believe it is.
Yeah, the only thing that I would say contrary to that is some people develop expectations.
Yeah.
There's a real problem like romantic movies. Some people will expect behavior that exists in these romantic movies only. Right. It's not indicative of human beings in the real world.
Yeah. Point well taken. I mean, I think the vital thing is that your brain has had sufficient experience that it can weight these fictional facts in a way that can enhance your response to the world, but not set undue expectations of things that are just, only going to be true in a fictional setting and not in the real world.
It's just so strange to me that we desire those. I mean, hero movies, right?
Yeah.
Like, hero movies are typical, especially Superman. Someone who possesses powers beyond anything known to human beings anywhere.
I get that. But I actually see it in a slightly different way relative to what you're talking about before. I think that the whole hero comes again from our recognition of how powerless we are against the forces of nature, against the inevitable death that is facing us all. And therefore, there's something deeply seductive about the possibility of a being that can transcend the limitations that we mere mortals are always subject to. So I think it's built into our DNA to respond to the way that we do, and what we do when encountering a hero in the world. I mean, there's, Joseph Campbell. Yeah. So, the Power of Myth, but his more technical version, the hero with power of basis. He goes through the whole notion of what it is to have a myth, and it's based on an individual called to rise above the kinds of activities that mere mortals resists the call at first, but then rises to the challenge, goes out into the world, conquers, comes back a changed individual, and shakes up the reality from which that individual initially emerged on this journey. And there is ample evidence that across cultures, throughout the ages, we have constantly been telling these kinds of mythological tales because they speak to us. They speak to our urge and our desire to transcend the limitations that our physical form and the laws of physics necessarily constrain us to.
Yeah, it is fascinating when you think of how much
Yeah. And I do think it all comes, look way back into the history of the occupation. It comes from this initial recognition that we are mortal. And the fact that our brains are able to not just fix on the moment, but can think about the entire universe is the one that makes that a huge realization. If we knew that we were going to die, it would mean nothing. But the fact that we can innovate and the fact that we have ingenuity allows us, make the real, that allows us to build a pyramid, that allows us to come up with quantum mechanics and Einstein's equations and Beethoven's symphony and Picasso's work. The fact that we can undertake all of these expressions of creative will and the desire to transcend the world around us has a downside. And the downside is we recognize that we are not going to be here for very long. And I think that motivates a certain kind of engagement with the world. And heroes.
Kurzweil is a fascinating character.
Yeah, he thinks he's going to be around forever.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Have you discussed any of this stuff with him?
You know, I don't know him personally. I've certainly gone to some of his talks, and I think he and I had one exchange at some point. And where he's coming from. He feels that we're the final generation. How sad it is after, 100,000 generations of humans, if we could only stick around for one more generation, science would come to a point where we would be immortal. That feels like a tragic state of affairs. I don't think he's right, and I think most people who think about this deeply don't think he's right either. However many vitamins you take, and however much science has progressed, the notion that we are just a generation or two from immortality, I think, is wishful thinking.
This is a strange concept of immortality, too, because it's not necessarily you. It's a downloaded version of you that will exist in some sort of computer.
Right.
Which is, what does that mean?
Right.
That sounds like hell.
Yeah, it could be.
Yeah. How's REM sleep in that computer?
Well, I allow for the possibility that maybe it would be a way of being in the world that would have upsides that are hard for us as flesh and blood individuals to appreciate at this point. But would that be a good thing? In fact, if you had that opportunity to be downloaded in some form, and that would allow you to hold on to all your memories, build new memories on top of them, have experience. Maybe there's an avatar that you're able to drive through, your mental machinations. Would you do it?
I might have said yes before I had...
She's slower than a freak-back tied to a tree.
Oh, really? So you think there may be something?
I don't know what... I mean, for sure, your body's going to decay, and you are going to become a part of the earth. You're becoming part... Unless they cremate you or unless they embalm you with some toxic chemicals, and then nothing can use your dead tissue, which is really a shame.
Yeah.
It's really a shame that we do that, right?
Yeah.
I mean, unless someone murders you and you have to exhume you in the past to solve, in the future, whether to solve a murder.
Right.
But I don't know what do you think consciousness is? Do you think consciousness is clearly just a factor of brain tissue and energy? Or do you think it's possible that what our brain is something that tunes into consciousness?
Yeah. Well, I spent some time thinking about this, and I think it's perhaps the deepest question that faces science or humanity. And my own personal perspective is that consciousness is nothing more than choreographed motion of particles in various quantum states inside a gloppy gray structure that sits inside this thing that we call the head. Do I have any proof for that? No. Does anybody have any proof for what consciousness is? Not at all at this moment. But the history of the reductionist program, where we've been able to take some of the more spectacular creations that have emerged in the world and recognize that they are nothing but the product of their ingredients and the laws of physics, leads me to extrapolate that idea to a series of awesome. Having said that, there's a deep part of it. It's called the hard problem of consciousness, which is if electrons and quarks and particles and laws of physics are all that there is, and if you buy into the fact that electrons don't have an inner world, that quarks don't have an inner world, how can it be that by taking a collection of those particles, you can turn on the lights? How can a collection of mindless, thoughtless particles somehow yield mindful experiences? And that's a deep question that science has not yet answered. My own feeling is when we understand the brain better, that question will evaporate. We look at the brain with our newfound understanding, maybe it's 100 years in the making, maybe 1,000 years in the making, and we'll say, aha, when electrons and quarks and protons move in this particular configuration, one of the byproducts is an inner sensation that we call conscious experience. And That, to me, is the likely answer to that. But there are some very smart, well-respected people who go in a very different direction. There are some who say electrons and protons and quarks, they do have a fundamental proto-conscious quality. They themselves are conscious beings of a sort. Now, it's not like you're going to have electrons that are flying or quarks that are anguishing, but if you have a little proto-element of conscious experience that is imbued into a particle, and then you take a lot of the particles and put them together, the idea is that yields the manifest conscious experience we're familiar with. I don't buy into that, but there are people
Why
who do.
do you pick a position?
Well, I take a position on this because I guess my view is you look out and what you do as a physicist, you move the smallest degree required to explain the phenomena that you are observing. And to move from our current understanding of the world, to leapfrog to a place where electrons are conscious, and quarks are conscious, to me is such a fantastically move that I would consider it justified to make that move with our current level of understanding. There was a time back in the 1800s when life itself was so mystical that people basically said the same kind of thing. How could a collection of lifeless particles ever come together and yield a living being? They said that they can't. You have to induce a life force. You have to inject vitally. You have to inject a life force. And that's what sparks the emergence of life on lifeless particles. I don't think any serious scientist thinks that today. I think most serious scientists say, yes, life is wonderful. Life is, in some sense, miraculous. But life is nothing but the particles of nature coming together to yield complex molecules of DNA and RNA, complex cellular structures. The cells come together to yield the more complex multicellular organism. All that it takes to have something that's alive. No life force is necessary. That way of thinking about the world. And my own thing is that that kind of progression is going to happen for consciousness. Today, it's utterly mysterious. How it is that I have this inner voice talking inside my head. How it is that I look around the world and I can see the color red and I can experience the color red. I don't just have sensors that can call that red. I mean, an iPhone can do that. I actually have an inner world where I feel that color red. Where does that come from? Hard to answer that question, but I think 100 or 1,000 years from now, we'll look back and smile at how we in this era invested consciousness with such mystical quality, when in the end it's nothing but particles and the laws of physics, and that's all there is to it.
Well, what's interesting too to me is that as a human being, my thoughts on consciousness are very deep and profound, and there's this idea of what is this thing. But if I'm really breaking down animals have some sort of a consciousness, including they have instinct we develop something far more complex in our ability to express ourselves in language. During that creation of that language, we've developed all sorts of bizarre concepts. We've developed all sorts of different ways to describe feelings and emotions and chemical as well. These things are continually getting more and more complex. You go to single-celled organisms, work your way up to, early hominids, and then get to human beings. You just see this ever-increasing form of complexity in every way.
Yes.
And in the way that the things see the world, of course, it makes sense that there would be more complexity.
Right.
But we don't think about that when we think of a parakeet. We don't think of a parakeet as being conscious. But a parakeet, relatively, is far more primitive than a chimpanzee, which is relatively far more primitive than a human being. It's going to continue to evolve if you survive. Things will continue to improve due to natural selection and mutation and all the other factors, and will be something that makes this today look like
Primitive.
the way we look at single-celled organisms or chimps or whatever.
Yeah, I can well imagine. Because we see, small changes in DNA. Little to change in what the beings that but at the same time, you may let yourself go. And I trust you agree know that those psychedelic experiences were generated by a slight change in the chemical makeup of the particles coursing through your brain and your body.
Sometimes not even change. Sometimes a lot of the
Right. So to me, that's a great piece of data that speaks to the fact that all it is particles and chemicals coursing through a structure. Because if the mind was somehow external to the physical makeup of all describing it, then how would the injection, say, of some kind of foreign substance, or as you say, the brain producing some sort of substance that it didn't ordinarily have within its makeup, why would that be able to have such a radical impact on conscious experience?
The way I would look at it if I was trying to argue against that would be that your eyes, the organs of the human eye are taking in light, and through that light are able to perceive physical objects in the world. They would not be able to do without light.
Yes.
It's something that allows you to see and it allows you to take in depth perception and that the human mind, and particularly these glands that use the psychedelic chemicals, when experiencing these chemicals, it allows the brain to experience things that might be there all the time,
Yes.
but that you cannot perceive with normal human neurochemistry. It needs to be enhanced, or the levels need to be changed and shifted. And what's really perplexing about these chemicals is that these chemicals are from the brain, and if you do take these liquid chemicals, that's the most potent of all the psychedelic chemicals. You take that, you have these insane, profound visions,
Right.
which is, leads to a lot of people having these religious, spiritual epiphanies. Have you done anything? Have you done any psychedelic experiences that you're allowed to talk about?
I have. Not many. And I'm a complete lightweight in this arena because I hardly drink. I hardly do anything that puts foreign substance in my body. But yes, I was in Amsterdam. I was there because I was giving a lecture to the Queen of Holland, and I gave the lecture. That over, I decided to do a little experimenting, and for somebody like me who does it, I made it because
Did you eat it?
well, the first night we went out and we went to one of these coffee bars, and I guess I can speak about this.
It's legal.
Yeah, totally legal, exactly. We took the easy way in, like the novice version, and it did nothing to me at all. So the next night when we went, I went right to the bottom of the list where it was in Dutch or something, but it had like machine guns, pointed at a brain. Yeah. So I did that version, and it was the most terrifying experience of my fucking life. And I didn't say that either. But we were in a club, and all of a sudden the world changed. And what started happening is my brain started manufacturing versions of myself that would converse with me and convince me that the reality that I was experiencing was real. And then that version of me would destroy that reality, and the process would start over and over and over again.
Is this something you smoked or you ate?
Smoked.
Yeah. Wow.
Definitely smoked. And again, I suspect that the impact was because my body has no experience, and so I think that just enhanced the impact. And, it was terrifying. It was utterly, I was in the hotel room, and I was clinging to the door, and I actually said, like, time because I'm like terrified of what I'm gonna do.
Right.
Wow. And so instead, she called the doctor, and she was like afraid this would be like newspaper, because they're just like give a lecture to the Queen, but they're so used to Americans getting into this experience, so it was something that they were completely used to. So they sent up a doctor, and the doctor basically just gives you sugar. And my wife knew that this was an extreme circumstance. I don't eat any sugar. But I was like, he said, eat as much. I was like taking the Milky Way bars. Like
So
I'm
sugar
vegan.
somehow or another counteracts
Sugar,
the
I don't know the chemistry behind this. But sugar is the antidote.
Caffeine is supposed to help. as
Caffeine
well.
helped too, yeah, But it lasted 8 hours. Even flying home on the plane the next day, all I did is I sat on my seat and I put on the headphones, and there was a Beatles channel, and I just like listened to Beatles for like 7 hours, and I was just in this place that I had never experienced before. Now for our conversation, this just made it so intuitively obvious to me that my conscious awareness is totally dependent on a few chemicals.
Right.
That's all that's happening inside of the head. So in a way, it was a valuable experience. Not something that I want to ever experience again. Absolutely. But it was something that helped align my intuitive understanding of what consciousness is with the scientific recognition that it all relies upon the stuff that's circulating inside of your mind.
Yeah, what's interesting about these heavy-duty psychedelic experiences, because what you took was, by most people's idea, very mild.
Yeah,
But
no
the more
doubt.
profound psychedelic chemicals that are also produced by your brain, if you just shift that ratio, and not by too much, really, you're not talking about you're talking about little small doses of this stuff. Shift that ratio, it produces these profound visions.
Is this like ayahuasca type
Yes,
stuff? Yeah,
ayahuasca
right.
is just an
Right.
orally active version of dimethyltryptamine.
Okay.
They figured out how to, your gut rather produces monoamine oxidase, and it breaks down dimethyltryptamine. And so they figured out how to combine an MAO inhibitor with the leaves of another plant that has the dimethyltryptamine.
see.
But you can take it, there's synthetic versions of it. But the point is, this is something that the brain produces, the liver produces. We know it's produced in the lungs. It's the body makes it.
Yeah, right.
But it's in there, but then
change the
if you
balance of it,
shift the
yeah.
balance, and all of a sudden you have these incredible it makes you think, like,
That just never gets
what
old.
what we have now in terms of our balance and our chemicals must be different than
Yes.
chimpanzee thing.
Right.
And primates before that. As the human, when you think of human evolution, do you ever stop to think, what are we going to be like a million years from now? What have you ever done this sort of thought experiment where you say, okay, if things keep going the same way,
Right.
we used to be very strong and very hairy, and we're getting, progressively softer as we don't need to use our bodies as much. Our brains are getting larger, our heads are getting bigger. You do that sort of thought experiment to see what we're going to become.
Not in a systematic scientific way, because the process is so fraught with incredible detail that I think it's hard for anybody, even experts in evolutionary biology, to really tell us anything that will hold water, that's really predictive. But on a general level, yeah. I mean, because people often wonder, why is it that we haven't been visited by aliens? It's sort of thing that comes up whenever you're talking about other life inside the
We'll
universe.
get to that in a minute.
Yeah. But the answer to that could be quite straightforward. Nobody out there cares about us because we're so ill-developed. We're so young on the cosmic scene that there's nothing interesting for them to find here on planet Earth. So to me, there's a natural explanation for why there can be other life out there, and yet they don't hang out around planet Earth. Just the way we don't hang around an anthill to try to have a conversation with, what's going on inside that particular structure.
I buy that argument the least.
You do? Really?
Yeah,
Okay.
because we're interested in butterflies. Butterflies are so boring. We're interested in moles. We're interested in
But interested in
squirrels.
we're interested in them for very specific reasons.
Sure.
Right? So typically we're interested either because we want to see the evolutionary development that yields this particular life form, or because there's a general curiosity about how this object is put together. If these other beings are so far beyond us that those kinds of taxonomy questions are no longer of any interest, then hanging around here may not hold anything for them to make the journey and stick around long enough for us to notice.
I don't buy that again for two reasons.
Okay.
One, because why would we assume that they're so far beyond us that they wouldn't be interested in these talking monkeys with thermonuclear weapons who dominate an entire planet?
Yeah.
That would be fascinating.
Right,
We
but
found some planet
Right.
somewhere where people are, the politicians all lie to themselves, everyone gets video through the sky, they fly in metal tubes that hurl over the oceans,
Right.
they pollute the oceans and eat all the fish. Like, these people are fucking crazy. We've got to go there and check this out.
But imagine that this civilization, the notion of lording over a planet, is like us talking about an ant lording over a grain of sand. So they may be galactic as opposed to planetary in their hegemony. And the notion of some little tiny rock orbiting some nondescript star in the suburbs of this completely ordinary galaxy off there on the side may not have the kind of pull that you imagine that it does.
Oh, I disagree. We think it's interesting when we see a chimp use a rock to open up a nut. You know, we
Yeah.
think it's interesting that, you know, there's an amazing photograph of an orangutan that's spearfishing. Have you ever seen it?
I have seen that actually. Yeah, right, no, it is.
He learned it from people apparently, but
Yeah.
still interesting nonetheless.
Right, but I don't think 100 years from now we're going to be as interested in
Really?
these kind of qualities, or 1,000 years from now, or 10,000 years from now.
Well, why
so,
would we assume that these things that come here from another planet are more than 10,000 years?
Well, that's a very good question, and I think the answer to that is we look at the history of the cosmos, and let's just call it our universe to be concrete, 13.8 billion years. And we look at life on planet Earth, and it's, a handful of billions of years old. So in a handful of billions of years, you can go from some complex molecules to human beings.
I like how you say it like it's not that long.
It's not that long because, imagine that life began a few billion years earlier in some other system. Stars and galaxies, they were starting up, a billion years after the Big Bang. So it could be that life in other worlds has a head start on us by a few billion years. And we know what can happen in a few billion years. It can take it from a single cell to us. And you can imagine from a few billion years from now into the future, it could be radically different. So to say it's 10,000 years ahead of us, that to me would be the unexplained coincidence. How unlikely that they started and we started within 10,000 years in the span of billions of years. That seems unlikely.
Does it seem unlikely when you're talking about the infinite size of the universe? There's perhaps an infinite number of Brian Greens out there talking to an infinite numbers of me.
Good point. So you're absolutely right. We're almost guaranteed, if the spatial expanse of the universe is infinitely large, that there are going to be places where it's within 10,000 years. Sure. But those are going to be a very small number compared to the places where it's not 10,000.
Is that true, or would it be an infinite number of them?
Well, it'd
not
be
a
infinite,
small number at all.
But they're different kinds of infinity.
So you mean in the space of the exact scope of the universe itself, a small number, relatively speaking, to where we are physically?
So I would say it slightly differently. I'd say look at a finite-sized ball in this large spatial expanse. So everything's finite now.
So let's get a 5 billion light year
ball. Right, and within that ball, the number that are differing from us by 10,000 years would be very, very small.
Original.
Finite.
So let's get a 5 billion.